You're joining with us for the part 2 of episode 7 of Satahana, Sustainability in the Current Context, with Mr. Rajishta Senaviratne from Department of Business Economics in the Faculty of Management and Finance of the University of Columbia. So we'll move on to the next question, sir.
Yeah.
Can businesses be successful and contribute to sustainable development? Can that both happen at the same time?
Yeah. Again, for me, the question is, how do you define success and how you perceive success? If you perceive success in terms of more profits, more money, more efficiency, more productivity, and all these kinds of things, versus if you measure success in terms of, having, a good feeling that you did something well and the employees are happy, customers happy, and all that. It depends on how you perceive it. So I think that's one important thing, how you define success. Are you defining success in terms of profits, in terms of, all that, versus, that feeling that you have done well and without, doing, how shall I say it, unethical or immoral actions, right? So I think one important thing is how you define success. I think that's one thing you need to decide. And then again, I think businesses can be successful and be sustainable. You could, I think, make business out of sustainability, I think. No, I was just saying, I was just thinking about this toothbrush. Am I the only person who thinks this way? And I'm sure there's a niche, maybe, I don't know. So I don't know, I was just thinking. So I think you can be, I think you could, I think the idea is that businesses need to be more responsible. And I think the responsibility should not be limited to their immediate stakeholders, let's say the employees and owners and all that, but also I think greater society at large. So if they think of the big picture and make decisions and, do things correctly, I think it comes down to how you define everything, whether you define success in terms of money and profits and all that, or whether you, prefer simplicity, having a simple business. I suddenly remember I once actually visited an SME a few years back. It was a very small business, nothing major, but he was extremely happy with what he was doing. And I actually visited two. I'm not going to tell names. And one of them actually had a lot of dogs, stray dogs and puppies, and he was feeding them. He was doing all that, and he was very, focused on their well-being. And at the same time, he's having this little business. It's and then I thought, that's nice. On one hand, he has the business that he's running, but at the same time, he also has this quality in him, which was kindness to animals. And I actually, I loved it because, because many would have, kicked them out or thrown stones at them or, whatever, but he was actually feeding them. There were, lots of stray dogs. And I mean, these are not these, expensive dogs. And, he was looking after them, feeding them. And I am a dog lover, so I immediately reacted to it. And then there was another SME that I visited. This again was a very small business. And I still remember how he was saying that the water he uses from this business is used in his garden for cultivation. And then I thought, if this small person can do this, we are not talking about large corporates here. I'm talking about two small, very small businesses. One is micro in, both are, I think, micro in nature. Can't large corporates also do the same? And so I think it depends on how now, for example, now this man, he uses the water that comes out of his production process, which he does at home. In a sense, he has a little shed where he's doing his little business. So it's kind of a very small scale, but the water that comes out of it, he proudly told me he's using it for his vegetable patch. And then obviously, if you're using water for the vegetables that you're consuming at home, right? You'll be very careful, right? You will not put contaminated water. And this man was not an idiot by any means. He's educated. He was, and I don't think that he would, use contaminated water. So little things as to how you measure success, how do you define success. And then I also think of, simplifying things would make things better. If you have more complicated business lines and all these kind of things, I think, would, I think, make things better. And as I said, innovation, I think should be geared towards, you know, um, I think innovation should be sustainable in nature. I mean, things are changing so fast that every year, you have something new coming out and then people start buying this new thing. And I always think, what happens to the old one? Do you throw it? Do you, I always think this. So, what if innovation could also look into these aspects of things as to what you do with the old stuff, right? And if you actually go back generations, if you speak to your grandparents, for example, they will tell you that they use things for 50, 60 years and they're very proudly saying it, we have been using this for 50 years and nothing has happened. Whereas now, if you look at it, it doesn't apply anymore. So, because things have changed and technological progress and people are talking about all this, and I'm not saying that it's wrong, but then do think about whether what we continue is right, and revisit what we're doing and rethink as to whether we can do it in a better way. I was once at a lecture by a very prominent academic, and he was saying, okay, so electric cars are great and hybrid cars are great, fine. But then what do you do with the battery after 5 years? Do you throw it? Do you replace it? How do you throw it? How do you dispose of it? And I kind of realized it's true, because, you come up with these new technologies, fine, which are supposedly good. But then what do? Do you throw the battery? Is it safe to throw? Is it biodegradable? Is it going to be, environmentally, is it going to create more problems in the future? And if you look at it, I'm not going to tell words, but there have been lots of innovations in the past which have caused severe issues in terms of health, in terms of environment. So again, innovation, I think, how do you do it? So I don't want to mention words, but I think you will get what I'm trying to tell you, because some innovations people made about 100 years ago, they were saying this is the best thing that we have created ever. And now governments are banning them across countries because they are causing a lot of problems. So again, maybe in another 100 years, people might say, oh gosh, why did this person create this thing? Because we have all these issues because out of this innovation. So what I'm saying is, I think you need to rethink whether your innovations as to whether, it's not just about creating innovation, but also ensuring, the whole process of it is important. Yeah, I think that would answer that question. So ultimately, I think being responsible to everyone and, think of the big picture, I think would be good.
Certainly, sir. I think the way we define success is the answer to that question, I think. So we'll
Yeah,
move
and
on.
also how you approach it,
Yeah,
how
yeah.
you approach how you do things, and the whole, I think
Sustainability and
I think
success.
business should be value driven. That's what I believe.
Certainly.
Just like consumers have values and beliefs, I think businesses should also have
You
values
need to add value, yes.
and they should be guided by these values in this whole process. That's what I think.
Certainly,
Yeah.
sir. We'll move on to the next question, sir.
Right.
How can the government promote sustainable development?
Again, as I said, well, on one hand, I think you need to promote education in a sense, not necessarily these competitive exams and all that, but education to ensure that you create awareness, inculcate values. I mean, if you look at many Scandinavian countries, If you take, I think Finland is well known for its education system. And if you look at statistics, Finland is one of the happiest and the greenest countries in the world. And, how did they get there? Because if you look at it, the education system is completely different. So I think you need to, I think in Sri Lanka, I think education has become too much of a competitive mess. It's, nobody has any good values. It's based on just memorizing, stuff without any understanding of, without any comprehension of principles of values and that curiosity to learn more and be open to different perceptions. Now, as I said, I am not interested in the label. So if, for example, I find something that is good, I don't care whether it comes from an Islamic book or a Hindu. I am a Buddhist, but I am open to different values. Now, for example, I don't know whether I would offend people, but I will say this one thing I love about Hinduism is all animals are almost sacred, associated with some god. So for me, that is, I think, in a way, telling people, leave animals alone, God will punish you. And I love it in a way because, it kind of promotes, that in a way, sometimes that stick works, So, yeah, so I think, when you do read these things, I think you become more aware. So education should, I think, not be just about the curriculum and theories. It's important because you do need to develop your thinking. But now people are developing memorizing, which I think is where everything has gone wrong. So education to me is about your brain, the ability to think, understand, and comprehend. It's not just, putting in the brain and recalling. The whole approach has to change. So that's one important thing. So I think education should be value driven, should should promote thinking, and should promote, how should I say it, being responsible citizens. I think that is important, and not just passing exams. So for me, I think education is about your brain, right? How you think and how you understand, how you perceive, and how you react, and ultimately wisdom. Ultimate, I think, outcome of education should be wisdom, right? And not just not just memory. So I think that's important. So on one hand, education system has to reform. I'm not saying that there should not be exams. There should be some evaluation, and there has to be exams because you do need to check knowledge. But I think students and parents and teachers and everybody also needs to realize that things have to be value driven, and and not just about getting the highest marks in an exam. So that's one thing. So education can promote sustainable thinking. And then, of course, health, it's important. Now, in our case, of course, our health statistics are excellent. And that is mainly due to this whole primary health care and all that. But again, I think health is important. And then also empowerment of communities, of societies, of people, and giving and embracing diversity and empowerment of everyone, I think, is important, irrespective of gender, race, ethnicity, or social class. And ultimately, I think you need to have a clear long-term policy as to what sustainable, what we should do. Now, I was listening to this interesting documentary about Bhutan, and how they have this long-term thing, and they are constantly working towards ensuring their carbon dioxide emissions are low. They will not allow, they insist on a certain percentage of forest cover. They are very tough on tourism. They don't just allow any tourist to come in. They are very concerned about their culture, preservation of culture. So, for me, I mean, being from a South Asian country, I personally like that model because, you're not just, uh, there is some discipline, and there is some uh, values being instilled. And I think it's one of the countries that measures happiness. They measure something called gross national happiness, versus measuring GDP. Now, I'm not saying that it's measuring happiness is better, but I sometimes feel these kinds of different ways of doing things might be better. And I was reading that I think Bhutan, 72% of the country is forest cover, but of course their population is very low, and they have a lot of land space, and you're talking about the Himalayas and all these kinds of things. But then we could apply the same thing here. Could we, for example, change the way housing is done? Just a little simple thing. And maybe more urban planning. The urban communities have to be planned. I mean, if you look at Scandinavian countries, European countries, most of them are highly developed. They are very, they have large populations. But at the same time, if you look at their green statistics now, it's very high. So you could actually promote long-term thinking and bringing in rules and regulations, being tough, and all that is very important. So I would rather say, more than the government do something about it, I think if people and businesses start taking more responsibility, and you know, what I'm trying to say. You
So,
don't need, a politician to do it for you. If you have good values, and I think that's more than enough. So
sorry,
it's
sir.
just a little things, I think, that you need to think of. Now, for example, now one of my biggest weaknesses is I'm sometimes not very careful with electricity. I tend to forget to switch off lights. And so now I purposely remember I have to switch it off. I have to switch it off when I come out of my room. So, you have to realize what your weaknesses are, and, and then try to find ways to overcome them. And if you start thinking of your weaknesses in terms of how your actions affect others, I think the world would become a better place. My personal thought.
Since you mentioned about Bhutan, I think they don't even have traffic lights in their main city, I think.
They don't.
Yeah, I've read about that. So I think they have
All
good
right.
discipline.
Yeah, they
So,
do. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I think now, what do you think, sir, since you mentioned about the education system, what sort of education system would it be suitable for Sri Lanka? And what is the importance of education in order to be sustainable?
I think, on one hand, as I said, education should not just be about, skill development, knowledge development. Also, it, I think, should be about values and attitudes, inculcating good values and good attitudes. And I think students also need to take some responsibility and start to, take, not knowledge is not memorizing stuff, but internalizing what was said. Now, a lot of people ask me, why do you learn theories? And I, of course, this is my answer to it. I think theory is not just memorizing it, it's the process of understanding it and conceptualizing it, and ability for your mind and your brain to understand what this other person is trying to say. And then I sometimes do this. Maybe you might think I'm mad, but sometimes when I watch people, I kind of think, oh, is that tourist trap, for example, that I'm seeing, or is that um, law of demand that I'm observing? And I kind of, because I'm a teacher, I teach this subject, so I kind of, it's in my brain. So when I see something, oh, is that I'm seeing? So the ability to understand and to conceptualize something, I think, is the most important thing. And that's why I think the importance of learning theory is that it should be about your thinking, the ability to understand, conceptualize, and then I think that is true education. So it's about this, the mind and not the memory. It's about thinking. And so I think students also should focus on that instead of by hearting things. being more open, reading a lot is important. And reading a lot, not just, you know, textbooks, but being open to different types of books, from fiction to non-fiction to religion to all kinds of things. And it opens your horizons. It makes you realize that there is so much out there. And it makes you kind of realize that we are completely insignificant and that we absolutely know little of what is out there. And once you realize it, you kind of realize, you know, you are insignificant in this whole universe of life. And so, I mean, I think it's important to change education to more, you know, knowledge, skill, attitudes, values. And also, as I said, I think it's important that education encourages people to take responsibilities for their actions, their ability to say, yes, I did something wrong, I'm sorry, and I should not do it again. Now, a lot of people, I think, in Sri Lanka find it very hard to say, sorry, yes, I did something wrong, I'm sorry. They would rather blame somebody else, or they would say, yes, but, you know, and then the but comes in. Whereas I sometimes say, yes, I'm sorry, I did something wrong, I should not have done it, and that's it. And it's over with that. So being able to be responsible. And now, once I remember, I went to this place in Colombo, which I'm not going to tell the place, and I was watching these people. They ate their lunch, you know, from lunch sheets, and they just left it and went off. And then I thought, is that being responsible? You know, are you being responsible? Are you just, you know, being irresponsible? So little things you could have easily, you know, taken it and disposed of it without just leaving it there and, you know, making somebody else clean up after the mess that you created. And I sometimes wonder where it came from, because let's say long time back, people would have packed their food in, let's say, those lotus leaves or banana leaf, and then you could leave it around. Of course, it biodegrades in a few days. And, you know, so are people thinking that the polythene sheet is the same as a banana leaf, for example? That's what I sometimes thought, you know, because the banana leaf is not going to be a problem because it's going to biodegrade, you know, in a few days, for example. But that same does not apply to a polythene sheet. So being responsible and taking, you know, little things matter. To me, little things matter. You know, how you eat your lunch, how you know, clean your place, how you treat others, how you respect others. And I personally think you have to respect everybody, irrespective of where they come from. Whether it's the richest man in the world versus the poorest man, you should be able to talk with some respect. Whereas now a lot of people would speak to the CEO differently and speak to the janitor completely differently. But you should be able to treat everybody with respect. So those are little things that I think education should be about. Being, you know, you need to promote values, you need to promote attitude changes, you need to create respect and promotion of this concept of respecting everybody, and and creating that feeling of responsibility for your own actions. I think those are little important things. And I think if you look at countries like Japan, for example, they do this very nicely. They kind of make people responsible for what they do. And, you know, whereas in our case, I think it's not there. So being responsible for what you do, so creating that sense of giving good values, principles, attitudes, backed with knowledge and skills. Those are essential because you need to have knowledge and skills. But if you have knowledge and skills without values and attitudes and, you know, responsibility, I think that's danger, because you have the knowledge, but if no value, you might end up creating nuclear bombs all over again, right? So uh, to me, knowledge, skills should be backed with good values, principles, and being more responsible. I was reading how I think the person who developed, was it dynamite, that he kind of regretted it.
Yeah,
Was it
the
Nobel?
no, yeah, was
Yeah. So I don't think he,
Alfred Nobel.
yeah, I think so. I was thinking, you know, so I don't think he intended it to be kind of, I don't think he was a bad man, but he kind of realized later that what he did had huge repercussions. Am I right? Am I? Yeah, I think
Yeah, he had
Alfred
some.
Nobel, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Alfred
So
Nobel.
yeah, so those are little things, I think. So I think it should be knowledge, skills, and also the value part of it. And I think education should promote thinking, and not just thinking, but critical thinking, the ability to think critically, not only of other people, but yourself as well. Thinking critically of how you do things. Can you do things differently? Um, I'm going to speak about myself, but I will, because about, I think some people at the faculty know this. I started walking from home to work every day. So I would leave home at about 5:30. I would walk to faculty and get to faculty at 6:45. The reason as to why I did that was A, it's good for my health. And B, then I thought, why should I drive a car in traffic when I have my 2 feet? When I have my 2 legs, which are currently functioning well, I might as well use them. And then I thought, I'm not harming anyone. It's good for my health. It's good. My petrol bill is also better off. Environment is also better off. And I started doing it. And I actually did it for a long time. And it was well known at the faculty, because I would come, I would then change and do all this. And I would leave clothes. I had clothes at office. And then I would change at office. And then how I used to go home was, I wished I could walk. But then in the afternoon, it's too hot and there's a lot of traffic. So then I used to go home by bus. And then a few days later, I kind of realized it's not good for my vehicle, because the vehicle has to be driven. So then I kind of thought, okay, let me walk 3 days a week. I will drive 2 days a week, so that my 5 days is structured in that way. And I continued this for a long time. And then unfortunately, Corona came, and that put an end to all this, because you can't technically wear a mask and walk for 1.5 hours. And I'm looking forward to when this stops again, so I can start. So I'm not telling everybody to start walking. That's not what I'm trying to say. But you need to think of what you do, and can you do things differently. I would love to go on a bike. Actually, I was thinking, can I go on a cycle? And then when I look at the roads, I kind of think, let me not go there right now, with the way people drive, whereas the pavement is safe, but not the road, especially for a cyclist. So I kind of have put that aside for the time being. So, you need to think of not little things of how you do things, I think, are important.
Thank you, sir, for that valuable insights and for the experience you shared, the stories you shared. I personally got motivated to change myself as well. So thank you for that. So
Okay.
that brings us to the end of today's session. It was a
Yeah.
great pleasure, sir, to have you with us here today, for
Thank
investing
you.
your valuable time and sharing your insights with us, which would be very useful for our young and upcoming future leaders. So once
Okay.
again, on behalf of FMF Media and from Team Satahana, a big thank you for gracing this event, sir.
Okay. You're welcome.
So
Uh,
sorry, just like all good things have to come to an end, I think now it's time to end this episode of Satahana. I'm sure each one of you would have encountered something useful. Thank you for being here with us. It's truly an honor. So stay tuned while we bring to you the eighth episode of Satahana very shortly. Hope you'll have a great day. Stay blessed and stay safe. Thank you.